Hey, hi, hello! Today we are going to be doing my July balancing the books. So every month, at the end of the month, I count how many books I read for that month towards my bingo board, and then I count how many books I bought, and I see if they're balanced and whether or not I have to take a punishment for buying too many books. I started doing this in January of 2021, and it is July of 2021, and so far I've only had 1 month where I've had to take a punishment, but that's all about to change. First things first, this is what my board looks like at the end of the month. I know it's hard to see, but these 3 are actually tiles. Normally they don't look like that. You've looked at it with your eyeballs and accurately inferred that there are no bingos on this board. I read a decent amount in the month of July, especially for being in a slump, but I didn't manage to make a single bingo. I did carry over 2 bingos from June, but let's be real, if you see my 2 vlogs from the month of July, you know that I have bought more than 2 books this month. We'll be getting into that at the end of the video. Right now, let's discuss the books that I am currently reading. So I am in the middle of 2 books, and those are The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, which is a reread for me and is my book club's pick for July. I haven't been able to finish it, but we aren't talking about it for a little bit as of filming this, so I'm not worried about that. Since it was a buddy read, I normally would knock it off the board right now since I'm at least 30% in and not count it towards next month. But since I have been doing so horribly this month with reading, and this slot is The Name of the Wind and we're going to be removing it, still no bingos. I am also currently reading Legacy of Steel. I am not very far into this. I am on page 30 as of right now. I am going to be doing some reading of this after I finish filming. I'm loving it. It's the sequel to my favorite book of all time, Legacy of Ash. I was going to be reading it for buddy reads, so normally I would flick it off the board, but as I'm only 30 pages in and I'm going to be reading this into August as well, I'm going to leave it on the board and you'll be seeing it in August's board playing, which has already come out for you all. I'm filming these videos out of order, so I'm a little confused. I am also currently in the book Words of Radiance. Where is that? It's underneath a large stack. I'm not gonna pull it out. I am slowly making my way through that, so whichever month I end up actually finishing that in will be the month that I put it on the board. But I made about 10% progress this month, which is really good because I haven't made any progress in a few months on it. Let's discuss now the books that I DNF'd this month and whether or not they affected the board. So my rule is, as long as I read at least 30% of the book, it can go on the board. I started and kind of DNF'd. I'm still like on the fence about Hold Back the Tide, which is this story about this girl who lives with her father, who her father murdered her mother a few years ago. They live in like the Scottish Highlands on this lake, and his job is to basically protect the town from anything that might come out of the lake. And she has dreams of running away and escaping and having a better life. So I read 130 pages of this. I still think I want to give it a second shot, but I've put it down a few times in the month of July just because of slumping, and I'm really not sure if this book was my slump or if I put it down because I'm not enjoying it. So I want to pick it up when I'm more in the mood for it. I did count it towards bingo, so I counted it towards favorite color on the cover, but it really doesn't matter because it didn't get me a bingo, so if I want to use it again another time, I'm not going to be mad. I guess that also goes for Name of the Wind, to be fair, because if I can make it fit next month, I'll make it fit. And then I also DNF'd Skullsworn, which is the book, the novella in Brian Staveley's The Unhewn Throne series. I'm so bummed about this. The biggest reasons why I DNF'd this one is because it switched perspectives from being third perspective to first perspective, and I have a really hard time with first perspective. The narrator changed, and I think she was really fun, but I didn't find myself caring so much about her world. So we are following a Skullsworn assassin in the same world kind of before the events of the first 3 books, and I just found myself not caring about her life. She's sent on this mission to kill 7 people in 14 days, I think it is, and she's having a really hard time with the last person she has to kill because she has to kill someone that she loves, and she feels like she's never loved anyone in her life. It sounds like a really cool idea. I definitely think I'll be picking it up again. I own it. I'm not unhauling it. I'm hanging on to it. That's it. Those are all the books I DNF'd. Those are all the books I'm currently reading. Let's discuss all of the books I read in the month of July. So in the month of July, I read 12 books, which is kind of on the lower end for me. I understand that that's not like low for majority of the people in the entire world, but with that 12 books, I need to mention that I play bingo from the third week of the month to the third week of the month. So my month isn't actually from the 1st to the 31st. It's from like June something to July something. Like let's just say June 20th to July 20th. So actually, in the month of June, I ended up reading 6 of those books. So the first week of July, I read 6 books. And then the last 3 weeks of July, I read 6 books, which is just going to show you that I really like slumped this month. I already talked about this last month in my reading wrap up because I didn't want to wait. So I read A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire in the month of June, but counting towards July's bingo, and I hated it. I really did, my dudes. It makes me angry just thinking about it, to be honest. Go watch that video. I rated it 2 out of 5 stars, but it came off of this month's board, so that's why I'm bringing it up one more time. On the board for this month, I was supposed to read The Crown of Gilded Bones. I didn't get to it. I am going to be reading it, but I just wanted to mention that really quickly that you'll be seeing this book again. Next up, I read Foe by Ian Reid. Ian Reid is the author of I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I really loved that book. I rated it a 4.75 out of 5 stars. Foe was great. Foe, though, really didn't have quite the same amount of like horror elements that I was expecting. It really was more of like a sci-fi mystery. Think along the lines of Twilight Zone episodes. Like that's kind of how it felt to me. So we are following this man and this woman who live out kind of in the middle of nowhere in this not so distant futuristic society from ours. And this organization has started this program where they believe that they have made different planets in our solar system habitable. And they have basically set up a lottery where random citizens are sent into space to see whether or not the planets can be lived on for a certain amount of time. And our man is randomly selected. And they tell him this at the beginning of the story. And then they say, you have I think it's like 2 years to live with your wife and just enjoy your time. And then we're going to take you for a few years and then you'll get to come back to her. Don't worry about it. And we get to watch him in those 2 years as he slowly descends into madness, thinking about the replacement that they are bringing to his wife that is going to like keep her company since they live out in the middle of nowhere. They don't want her to get lonely. So they're having this being replace him. And it was really enjoyable. It was really short. I do recommend it. I would definitely reread this book. I actually did a whole entire reading vlog on this and The Deep, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. And if you want to know some like really in-depth thoughts about those 2 books, I'm just gonna send you to that video. But I ended up rating this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Really liked it. Would reread. Definitely more sci-fi than it was horror though. Next, I read The Hostile Hospital in the Carnivorous Carnival by Lemony Snicket. And I also did start The Slippery Slope, but I like wasn't getting into it. So I ended up, since I'm rereading these books for my book club, we are discussing them. I decided just to read, like I read 30% of The Slippery Slope, which meant I could technically count it towards the board. And then I read like an in-depth summary for the rest of it. And I'm calling that good because this month was just hell. So I ended up rating, I don't remember, let me pull up my notes. The Hostile Hospital, I ended up rating a 4.5, and The Carnivorous Carnival, I ended up rating a 3.5, but let's be real, it was probably closer to a 3. So these are later books in Series of Unfortunate Events where the 3 Baudelaire orphans have just lost their parents and they have this fortune that they can't get hold of until the oldest, Violet, turns 18, and their first guardian that they go to stay with, whose name is Count Olaf, is trying to steal this fortune from them. And each book is them basically with a different caretaker, but in the later ones it's kind of them just on the run. I really enjoy these books. I really like them. They are weird, they're funky, they're humorous, they're fun, but 13 is a lot of books, and when I read them back to back like this, I'm definitely like, okay, let's get going. I actually won't be able to continue on into the Grim Grotto, the Penultimate Peril, and the end because unfortunately the way I was reading them was through my library, and my library did a giant unhaul a few weeks ago, and when I went to go check out the next one, they no longer have them. So my book club is continuing on without me. I'm just going to be reading some summaries online since I have already read them, and we'll still be doing our thing. But just so you know, you won't be seeing them in August's TBR bingo. Next, I read The Deep by Nick Cutter, and I kind of briefly mentioned this when I was talking about Foe. Go watch that video if you want to know some really in-depth thoughts. Nick Cutter is also the author of The Troop, which was one of my favorite books of 2020. I freaking loved it. I digested that book so quickly. It stuck with me. I want to reread it, and my dudes, The Deep was right there with it for me. I totally understand that just based on reviews online that this is an unpopular opinion, that a lot of people loved The Troop but they didn't enjoy The Deep, but I really loved it. I just like, oh my god. So I rated it a 5 out of 5 stars. It's making it on my favorites of this year list. I am looking for other books by Nick Cutter as we speak. I'm planning on reading Little Heavens as soon as I can get my hands on it. The Deep is about this man who, he lives in this world where there is this disease that has racked the entire land, and the disease makes you lose your memories and eventually like lose the ability to function. And so his brother has been sent down into the deep, into the ocean, where he thinks he has found a cure, but the scientists that were talking to him on the surface have lost touch with him. So they are sending his brother, our main character who we are following, down to confront him. And it's terrifying and it's spooky and it's scary and it's gruesome, and there's horror, there's body horror, there's animal torture, there's lots of trigger warnings in this book. I would not recommend it to many people, to be completely honest, but I really loved it and I think about it a lot, and it spooked the hell out of me. You can watch that video and you can actually see me on camera get scared multiple times because of like noises in the distance while I'm filming. It's great. Oh my god, I haven't told you what I've read any of these books for. Oh well, that's fine. Next I read The Dead in the Dark by Courtney Gold. So this was an arc. This book is coming out in November and I have thoughts about it. I went into this book really excited, and I was kind of let down pretty quickly into it, not gonna lie. I do want to say though, I do personally think that a lot of the things that I didn't enjoy were personal preference, and a lot of you will enjoy it. But also, sometimes I say that because I want to be nice, not because I actually believe it. So The Dead in the Dark, we are following this girl whose two fathers used to be from this really small hometown in Snakebite, Oregon, and her fathers run this paranormal TV show. Think Unsolved, think like along the lines of that. They go to different places where there are paranormal events and try to prove or disprove them. They have returned to their hometown and taken their daughter with them, and she's never been there before, because they are trying to solve this disappearance, but they're not seeming to be solving it for their TV show. And the daughter is kind of teaming up with another girl in the town, and the two of them are trying to prove that this girl's boyfriend, who is the missing person, is not dead, that he's alive, that he's missing, and the two of them kind of strike up a romance together. Thoughts, opinions, things to say. It was really slow. It felt like the relationship between the characters didn't build appropriately. It felt like the romance that developed was way too fast, and that the main girl's love interest kind of left her old boyfriend rather quickly. It wasn't really spooky or dark. I wanted more paranormal stuff, and then when the whole entire resolve happened at the end, I felt like it was really predictable, and I felt like by the time we got there I didn't care about that part of the mystery. Good things. Let's think of something good I can say about this book. There were these, what do you call those? Oh my god, I can't think what they're called. Intermissions in the book where our villain would talk to us, the reader, and the villain is the dark. That's what they're referred to as in the story. And that part was really interesting. I really liked those. I think you actually start out, the first chapter is from the dark. That's all I have to say about this book. I think a lot of people would really enjoy it. It was a YA horror paranormal mystery. It has one of my favorite tropes in horror of all time, which is, I don't know if this is ghosts or just real people pretending to be a paranormal event, but we will find out. Except I don't know, it just didn't do it for me in this one, and I'm really not sure why that whole entire, like, the mystery is it paranormal or is it not paranormal, just like didn't hit me right, but it didn't. I don't know, I'm just kind of left with like being whelmed by this book. So I rated it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. And we're moving on. Next, I read Empress of Salt and Fortune. I will be talking about this in a video that's coming out. It's in the fall. I think it's October or November. I'm really not totally sure, to be honest, but I'll briefly talk about it here, and then you can go watch that video when it comes out eventually. So I didn't love this book. I should have known going into it because it's so short, and I tend to not like short stories, especially fantasy short stories. The whole entire point of fantasy is escapism and getting into the world and like just being part of this magic system. And with short stories, I just don't have the ability to like really get into them the same way. I never like them. And I put this on my 5-star predictions list because the description did sound really good. It is about this empress who is like forcibly brought over to marry this emperor, and she kind of strikes up an unlikely friendship with her handmaiden, and then both of them are basically banished after she has her son, and the empress is spending a lot of time trying to figure out solutions, rebellions, all kinds of stuff like that. But it's told in story perspective, which can be good for me, can be kind of sucky for me. The soldier story is being told from the handmaid, who is telling the story to these like 2 chroniclers later in life. So she's like looking back on the story and talking about it, and it's over the course of like a few days, I think it is, that she tells the story. It just didn't do it for me. Sometimes like stories within a stories really work for me, and sometimes they don't, and I actually talk about the reason why I don't think this one worked for me in that video that'll be coming out, so I'll leave that kind of commentary for then. The other thing that kind of confused me was there were people who were animals, and I'm not sure if it was a metaphor or not. So I ended up rating this book 2 out of 5 stars. Ooh! Finally, I can start holding some things up for you. Next, I read Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boley. Oh my god, guys, I loved this book. First off, it made it on my favorites of the year list already. There were 4 books I read this month, even with my slump, that have made it on my favorites of the year list. I am baffled. But this book was so good, and I don't even think I'm going to be able to accurately describe to you what was so good about it because I don't want to spoil anything for you. But we are following this 18-year-old girl who is part of the, well, she's half indigenous from the Ojibwe clan, and she is half French, white American, whatever you want to call that. And so she basically feels like she's from 2 worlds but doesn't really fit into either of them perfectly. And so her father died a while ago, and she's being raised by her white mother, but she is near her clan, and she is still in touch with a lot of her native family. And she had plans to go off to college and study and do these great things, but then her uncle, and this part happens before the story starts, dies. And she feels like she no longer wants to leave home because her grandmother and mother aren't dealing great. So she decides to go to a college near her hometown and still live at home, at least for her first year. And then some more horrible things happen. And I'm not going to talk about those horrible things because that will spoil the story. But this boy moves to town, and he definitely seems to have an interest in her, and they kind of strike up a friendship. It might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less, but in the course of the horrible things happening in her life, she starts to wonder whether or not she can actually trust this boy or not, or if he is who he says he is. And it leads her into some dangerous situations until eventually her whole entire life is thrown upside down, and she is in danger. She is scared, but she is still kicking butt. Let me tell you what I loved about this book. Our main character, I already forgot her name. Oh, Donis. Our main character, Donis, is amazing. She's so strong. Even in her struggles, she has strength, and she is making it in the world, and she is doing what she thinks is best, not only for her, but for her clan. She is so selfless. She takes care of people around her. She loves people genuinely, and you can really see that, especially in her interactions with the elders of her community, and you can see how much they truly care about her based on some of the things that they end up doing for her later in the story. There's hockey, there's love, there's lots of unfortunate, horrible things that happen in this book, and it was so impactful and so powerful. As soon as I finished it, I instantly wanted to read it again. but I didn't. I needed to read other books. There are a lot of trigger warnings that you need to know about before going into this book, and I feel like I'm gonna miss a few of them, so I'll name as many as I can remember right now, but if you are concerned, please do some research on it before you read it. But if you think you can get past these trigger warnings, I highly recommend this book. So there's definitely some on-page rape and domestic abuse. There are drugs, there is crime, there is on-page murder, there is like on-page abuse. I think that's the ones I can remember right off the top of my head, but I really enjoyed this and I'm so glad I read it. Don't even want to put it next to Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. I'm so mad at that book. Next, I read Where Dreams Descend. I actually did a whole entire video on this book as well, so I won't be going too in depth with my thoughts here. You can go check that one out. I'll have it linked somewhere. This is the book about a girl who has magic, and there's magic like throughout some of this world, not all of it, and she's kind of imprisoned in this like palace. And one day she escapes and goes to this like carnival competition thing where she tries to basically prove that she's the best magician so that she can get a place in the carnival. I feel like I did a bad job describing that. Things I had issue with this book. I don't think I like carnival books, so that's on me, to be completely fair. I've never connected the dots until right now, but it really reminded me a lot of The Night Circus and Caraval, which I didn't like either of those, so I don't know why I thought I would like this one. To be fair, I read this book because it was recommended to me if I also liked Firekeeper's Daughter, and there were zero connections between the book. Goodreads like really failed me on that one. 0% alike. Another thing I didn't really love in this book was feelings of insta-love. The competition didn't start until I think it was like 35% through the book, and I was there for the competition. And then when the competition did start, it didn't feel like the stakes were high enough or that they were real. Like, I didn't totally understand why our main character was so fixated on her only step forward was being part of this circus. She like couldn't think about any other possibility for her future, and I didn't understand that. I also felt like the villain I didn't understand why he was coming after her or why he was like targeting her so much. I didn't feel like I understood any character's motivations in this book or why they were doing the things they were doing or why anything mattered. The atmosphere was really beautiful. So I ended up rating this book 2 out of 5 stars. If you want to know more, I already had it linked. We're good. Next up, I read Song of Blood and Stone, and this is the edition I read, but I also bought this edition this month, and I talk about it in my July vlog. And then I found out that this edition is actually a special extended edition, so there's a lot more in this version than there is in the hardback, but I didn't have time this month to read the extended universe. So my plan right now is to continue on with the rest of the series. Book 2 and 3 are already in my hands, and book 4 will be coming out in August. So once I read those ones, coming back and trying this one again and seeing what more there is to offer. I read this and I loved it. Okay, you're gonna hear this for one more book after this. I instantly wanted to reread this book after I finished it. I enjoyed it so much. I ended up rating it a 4.5 out of 5 star though, because I definitely could see some areas for improvement, and I feel like with the next 2 books, I will definitely be seeing some of that improvement, because where I felt like the book was lacking was a lot of like the writing, because this is the first book that this author had published, and I could see her just getting better as time goes on. But in this book, we are following Jasminda and Jack. Jasminda is living on the border, and she is half of both cultures. So her mother was from like this light-skinned area that has no magic, and her father was from this dark-skinned area that has magic. And she has magic, and the people around her basically believe that she's a witch and want nothing to do with her. One day, some guards show up in her hometown, and they have this hostage Jack, and they want to stay with her for a few days to wait out this storm. Her and Jack basically start to uncover some secrets about how one of the sides is going to be starting a war with the other side. They start a journey to try and stop that from happening. And there are lots of amazing tropes in this book. This book was not at all what I expected it to be, not gonna lie. There were sex scenes in this book. It was definitely new adult. I would recommend this book to 18 to 25-year-olds. It was good. I enjoyed it. There were some like YA tropes in this book, but there was also some like adult fantasy themes. I really feel like this is a book that you should check out if you're kind of in between the age range for fantasy. Like if you're in YA fantasy, but you want to be trying some more new adult or adult fantasy, but you don't necessarily want to lose all of the things that you loved in YA fantasy, this is a great one for you to try out. Highly recommend. I can't praise this book enough. I can't wait to read the next one. Next up, I read Rules for Vanishing, and once again, as soon as I finished this book, I instantly wanted to reread it. It was so good. It made it on my favorites of the year list. Am I a broken record? Yes. But I loved this book so much. This is a YA horror where we are following this girl named, I just finished this like 2 days ago. We're following this girl named Sarah, and her sister Becca went missing a year ago, almost to the day. And her whole entire school gets this mysterious text message saying that the road will be open. Now, Sarah believes that her sister Becca went on this mysterious road in the woods, and it's kind of like this magical unknown being to try to find this girl named Lucy Callows, who disappeared in the 1800s, I believe it was. There's this whole entire myth and legend in this town about the road and Lucy and things going wrong. So Sarah believes her sister is on the road, and so when they get this mysterious text message, a few of her classmates agree to go on the road with her, and there are certain rules that you have to follow to be on the road. And they basically go off on this journey together to try to find Becca. And let me tell you guys, this was scary. This was terrifying. This was great. This is everything I want in a YA horror. Like, oh my god, you learn really quickly that not everything is as it seems, and it's told in this multimedia storytelling way. So there are interviews, there are podcasts, there are video clips that are read to you. There are actually chapters that are written down that are like confessions. It was so good because the whole entire story is this file that we are reading based on this doctor who is investigating this whole entire weird phenomenon called the road. And so he is interviewing Sarah, and you eventually learn out a few of the other characters who are on the road and compiling this list of data to figure out what exactly happened. Guys, it was so good. Like, if you can get past the creepy, eerie weirdness of this book, give it a shot. It was so fantastic. One thing I'm really excited about is it starts off at the very beginning. The first little bit says, as requested, we have obtained access to the file of Dr. Andrew Ashford, specifically concerning the incident in Briar Glen, Massachusetts. And it goes on to talk about like how these people got you this file and how you're in danger because Dr. Andrew Ashford now knows that you're coming for the file. And then the next little bit says file number 74, which means there's 73 files before this about paranormal events that could have happened in this world. And I really hope that the author chooses to write about at least one of the other ones because I loved this. If you guys have any other recommendations for horror that's told kind of like this, where you have mixed media, interview style, it's described on the back as being very like Blair Witch Project-esque, hit me up. I want to read. I want to read those books so bad. So I rated this book a 5 out of 5 star. I don't know if I mentioned that. I think I already said it made it on my favorites of the year. Moving on. The final book I read this month is Delirium by Lauren Oliver, and this was a reread, and I read this for a video project that'll be coming out either September or October, can't totally remember right now, but this is like a YA dystopian classic book that a lot of us read many, many years ago, and I'm giving it a reread right now. Originally, I rated the book 3 out of 5 stars, but this time through, I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. Guys, I don't understand. There were so many eye roll moments. There were so many just like bad YA dystopian moments, but there were also so many good moments. And I found myself like really, really enjoying my reread of this. I like Lauren Oliver's writing. It's definitely like right up my alley, and I understand that it might not be like the best for everyone out there, but I really liked it and I really enjoyed my reread of this. And since this is such like a well-known book, I'm not going to be going super in depth into it this time. I think this was worth a reread, to be completely honest. That's it. That's all of the books that I read this month. So let's discuss all of the books that I bought this month. God. So first up, I hauled Hold Back the Tide. And as I've already started this and I made 30% through, it doesn't count towards bingo. So cool, nothing to say there. Then Audible did a ridiculous sale where almost every single audiobook was 70% off. So I ended up buying quite a few audiobooks, and let's go through those rather quickly. I'm not gonna go in depth about what these books are about because we're about to hit so many books. So first off, I purchased The Sword of Kaigen, A Touch of Darkness and A Touch of Ruin, Rhapsodic, A Strange Hymn, and Dark Harmony. I bought Skullsworn, but since I ended up making it through a good chunk of that, I am not counting it towards bingo. I pre-ordered, I'm having a hard time with this, so I have to look at the words, Vespertine, which is coming out in October, and it is the next book written by the author of Sorcery of Thorns, Morgan Rogerson. I bought Foe, but I listened to it this month, so it gets crossed off the board. And those are all the audiobooks I bought. So now let's discuss the physical books I bought this month. Oh boy, there's a lot here. So I already showed you that I bought a special edition of Song of Blood and Stone. I'm not counting this towards like buying for bingo because I did technically read the book this month, just a different edition of it. But I also purchased the second and third book in the series, which is Whisper of Shadow and Flame, Cry of Metal and Bone. So I now have these three bad boys on my list of books I need to get to. I also picked up Guild by Raven Kennedy. I also purchased The Atlas 6 and Blade of Secrets. Then I picked up Song of the Forever Rain, The Name of All Things, which is the sequel to The Ruin of Kings, and House of Leaves, because my dudes, if I'm gonna read a mixed media format horror book, I'm gonna read the OG mixed media format horror book. I also bought Rules for Vanishing, but I read it this month, so it doesn't count towards bingo. And that's it. Guys, I bought 20 books this month. Ouch! So I came into the month of July with 2 bingos from June. And when you cross off everything else that I've read or DNF for this month, that's 15 books that I need to have bingos for. And as you've already seen from my board, I had 0 bingos this month, which means there are 13 books that I bought that mean nothing, that I shouldn't have, that I haven't paid for with bingo. I did some thinking, and I decided this a while ago into the month, which I think didn't help buying all of these books, but it is what it is. It's too late. Because of my slump and because of the move and because of just, if you don't know, a lot of things have been happening recently in my life that are just crazy and chaotic. I am going to give myself a grace month. I think moving forward, I'd like to give myself 2 grace months a year, and I would like them to be December and July. I know that doesn't totally make sense because July isn't like June, it's not the middle of the year, it's not the 6th, but July tends to be a lot harder of a month for me, like mental health wise, than June ever has been in the past. Moving forward, I'd like to add the addendum that in December and in July, I am allowed to just ignore bingos. I can play them if I decide to, but I'd like to just have that availability for if I need it. So this month, I'm not counting bingos. I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna be lax and forgiving of myself, and I think that's okay too. I'm not gonna roll over June's bingos into August. I'm just gonna clear the board completely and say that I'm at a flat 0, nothing going on, nothing happening. Going into August, I will need to read in order to buy any more books, which shouldn't be too hard because I have plenty of books to read now and I don't really need to go buy any more. If you haven't seen my bingo's already out for you guys. I'm filming out of order, I need to remember that. I am changing up the rules a little bit for bingo, so August will be really fun and I'm excited about that. And I know every month I keep saying like, oh, I'm changing the rules for bingo, but it's because I'm trying to find that sweet spot of things that work for me. That's this month. That's all the books I read and all of the books I hauled and all of the books ever written. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what you thought about the books I've read, if you've read any of the books that I've hauled, if you want to talk about books in general, let me know down below. I love talking to you guys. It's so much fun. Y'all are the best. I'm not gonna lie. The people who comment in my descriptions, I love each and every one of you. Minus the one person who told me that audiobooks don't count as reading. That person can suck it. Anyways, I don't remember how my outro goes, but until next time, I'll talk to you in the comments. Bye.